We may have a few more people joining us as we go, which is fine, but I want to welcome everybody this afternoon to the Team Research Symposium Researchers Panel. I'm Mary Jo Daniel, Associate Vice President for Research, and I'm going to serve as a moderator for the panel this afternoon. We do want this to be interactive, and the way we're going to operate is I'm going to ask each of the panelists, and we have an amazing collection of panelists with great variety of experience and background, to introduce themselves and talk for just a couple of minutes about some of the highlights of their experiences in team research. And then after each of the panelists has a chance to give that brief introduction and overview, then we'll open it up to questions to everybody. As you're listening to the panelists, if they say something that you'd really like to follow up on, I encourage you to put it in the chat so that we don't lose it. But we'll look at chat, but we'll also open it up for people to unmute and ask questions with their actual voices as opposed to just in chat. So again, welcome. And we're going to start with Dr. Frances Hayashida, and take it away, Frances.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here today. My name is Frances Hayashida. I'm a professor of anthropology. I'm also the director of the Latin American and Iberian Institute. I am an archaeologist. I work on ancient water management, land use, and politics in desert regions of South America. I've worked on the north coast of Peru, and I'm currently co-directing a project on these topics in the high altitude Atacama Desert. It's a project where there are 4 co-directors from 3 different countries. There's me, 2 archaeologists from Chile, Diego Salazar and Andres Troncoso, and Cesar Parcero Oviña is the 4th co-director, and he's from Spain. A little bit about benefits and opportunities first. So I am in a field, archaeology, where there's usually a single PI. And so you can imagine, and I was single PI of my project in Peru for, about 20 years. And so it was an adjustment, learning to be a co-PI, right, with three other people that we didn't actually know each other before we started this collaboration. But it's turned out to be a really fantastic experience. We make all our major decisions jointly, and we have just learned a lot from each other. We have come from, so it's archaeologists, and because we look at land use, there are also people with backgrounds in soil science, geology, paleobotany, there's a cultural anthropologist as well. So we've learned a lot from each other, given our different training, different areas of expertise, different national and cultural backgrounds. It's something I think where the whole is definitely greater than the sum of its parts. It's been also, I think, a really excellent opportunity for students that have been on the project from the different participating countries to also learn about international collaboration through the project. On a practical basis, doing an international collaboration like we have it opens up sources of funding. We have funding that has come from the national science agencies of all 3 countries, plus other institutions. So that's been very beneficial. And we're also publishing and presenting our research on internationally on 3 different continents because we have this collaboration. Challenges, I would say, it can be hard to launch a new international collaboration, right? Because of all the differences, and because of the distance and all the travel and trying to get things set up. There's a benefit, though, is that you work at UNM, and at UNM there are lots of different sources of seed money, and particularly, recently with all the different initiatives of the OVPR's office, there's lots of different sources of seed money. So, so there are the new sources from the OVPR's office. There's also RAC, which has been around for a long time. The Latin American and Iberian Institute, which I direct. We also have seed grants for both faculty and students to go down and start research projects, which can include trying to establish, collaboration so that you can move these projects forward. This project that I direct now, it was it was before I was director of the LAII. I got one of these small seed grants, went down, we figured out that the collaboration was going to work, came back, and then we just applied for a range of external funds, some of them which are earmarked specifically for international collaboration, and that's just been really fantastic that we have this seed money that lets you get started. Another challenge I would say is that the LAII provides support for Latin American projects and as well as for training. We rely on external support for a lot of the programs that we support. And one disadvantage we have at UNM is that at least currently, internationalization is not one of the areas of research and training emphases. And so that puts us at a disadvantage against other campuses where they have these big kind of internationalization pushes to get their to internationalize both their research and their training. And it's not that international research isn't going on at UNM. Obviously there is a lot of work, but if there could be ways to kind of to kind of more highlight what that this is an area of strength, and that there are ways that we might be able to kind of join forces across the university to hone our message about what our international strengths are, and make that a clearer emphasis in both research and training. I think that would be really beneficial to a lot of people across campus. So that's my spiel.
Thank you very much. We're going to move right along to Professor Lloyd Lee from Native American Studies.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lloyd Lee. I am a professor in the Native American Studies Department. I'm also the director for the Center for Regional Studies here at UNM, and then also the editor for an academic journal called Wichasasa Review, which is the Native American Studies journal. And then there's quite a few other things on my list, but I'm not going to name them because it just reminds me of how tired I get with doing all of this work. But there's a few things that I want to talk about. One is about a lot of my work and research focuses on Native communities, indigenous communities here in North America. And a lot of it has to do with what the goals and objectives are that community-based research is about. A lot of communities are dealing with some really deep challenges in regards to a variety of different areas, including health, education, economics, environment. Basically, you can go down a long list and the challenges that they're facing. So a lot of these communities are wanting to collaborate with scholars as long as they recognize the importance of what they're trying to accomplish in terms of their goals and objectives, and that the work, that the research stays within their communities. And I think that's a huge benefit because as scholars, as researchers, one of the things that really is about research is about building strong and positive and trustful relationships. And indigenous communities want to build those, and they want to work and engage with researchers and scholars and educators who are willing to do that. And so basically, I think one of the positives of building this is about really engaging with people who are wanting to work with you and talk to you and help them in whatever their challenges may be, whether it's, again, education, health, economics, the environment, whatever it may be. And so really it's about talking. It's about building those relationships. It's about engaging with individuals in a way that brings it out. So this is a constant thing, and that when you do that, you meet people who are wanting to work with you in a positive way and to achieve their goals. And I think that's, for my experiences, that has been very beneficial in the sense of building that type of trust and communicating in ways that people get to know you. Before the pandemic hit, it was about engaging with people in the community, going to visit them, going to visit their communities, talking with them about whatever the study may be, or the research, or helping deal with a challenge. Since the pandemic has hit, the technology has come into play. Now, a lot of Native communities didn't have that technology in place, but in the last couple of years, they have been building it slowly. It's still not quite to the point where technology is reliable and stable. It's not quite there yet. I think there are certain places that it has been built to where they have that opportunity to engage with technology more successfully. So that's definitely a challenge working with Indigenous communities, is the technology is still not quite there yet. And so it's as we slowly transition into being more back in person, then we're going to see, I think, more of those types of discussions and participations together in a way that's beneficial. But a lot of Native communities still are not quite there yet. There's still a lot of public health orders in place dealing with the pandemic. And so it's not quite as easy yet to get to that point yet. But that's another challenge in terms of the current times. But it's something that will overcome, because we will be going back to doing more in-person type of engagement. And so that's really, I think, the most positive. And then I think one of the other things that's a challenge is just finding the resources, finding the funding in regards to whatever their project that they may be focusing on, whether it's a humanities project, whether it's a public health or environment, or whatever they're wanting to look at. That's the challenge, is helping them look for those types of fundings that they can access and help with their research projects. So I'll go ahead and stop there. There's a lot more to talk about, but I'll stop.
Thank you very much. Dr. Johnnye Lewis from the College of Pharmacy.
Hi, from all the way on the other side of Lomas, the Great Lomas Divide. So thank you very much for including me. I'm happy to actually be learning more about some of the programs on main campus that I think I actually should know more about. So I'm a toxicologist, and as Mary Jo mentioned, I'm from College of Pharmacy, and my research has focused on community partnered research in environmental health. And so everything that we do is driven by Indigenous community questions at this point. It's pretty much kind of shifted to that solo focus. It's right now conducted in about 3 large interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary centers that are funded through different institutes at NIH. And they're all in their second phase of funding. So we've had these teams building for quite some time, and there are probably over 100 students and researchers and community partners in each of them. So it's a pretty big network of people, and a little bit unwieldy. But we maintain really strong connections to communities. I really appreciated listening to Lloyd, and obviously many of the things that he mentioned are things that we deal with on a regular basis as well. So I look forward to continuing those conversations. Because we're doing environmental health research, and because it's being driven by Canadian community, I'm also Canadian, community questions, that has meant that having team science approach means we can bring in a lot of people as needed to answer whatever direction the community's interests have gone. And these environmental health questions are largely associated with the Cold War weapons development in most of the work that we do. And so they're pretty extensive in terms of both the scope of the problem and the diversity of the situation. So our partners are from Earth and Planetary Sciences and Engineering and Math and Biology, Internal Medicine, College of Nursing and College of Pharmacy, Geography, the Center for Development and Disability, and Education. They span disciplines, including mineralogy and civil engineering and ecology and anthropology and ethnography. We have artists, we have traditional healers on the team, indigenous language and culture specialists, immunologists, molecular biologists, biostatisticians, geographers, toxicologists, gut biologists, clinicians, child psychiatrists, and psychologists. We also work with a lot of other institutions that are connected with us through subawards. And we're also part of a initiative called ECHO that's run out of the Office of the Director at NIH. And that is a whole other level of team science, because there are 30 funded sites that have worked together to build one common protocol that we're trying to enroll between 50 and 100,000 children into, and follow how the environmental influences influence their health and development. We have the only exclusively Indigenous cohort within that, and that has had lots of challenges as well, because of the issues of privacy and data sharing agreements that had to be put together, et cetera. But I think that one of the probably biggest things that I think this has resulted in is this ability for an extensive research program to actually be tied to the concerns of our populations. And I come from an old political organizer background. And so to me, if we're a publicly funded institution, that's where a lot of our energy should be going. And it's felt really good to be able to build those relationships over decades. And to be able to bring enough people in to feel we can answer the complexity of questions that communities come up with, and to have that larger group of people willing to listen to community concerns and to learn from them. And I think that that has taken the science in much more innovative directions as well. I think many of our researchers are asking questions that, had they stayed working independently and within their field, would never have come up. And we've also seen some really interesting interactions that I don't think any of us anticipated. Things like looking at biota in a rhizosome and how it influences the way plants take up metals. Metals are the main thing we look at. And then realizing that we could directly apply that to looking at microbiome function in the gut as something that's contributing to the toxicity of those same metals in people. So, you know, these things get driven by communities, but having this really broad interdisciplinary team, I think, really does add new approaches. I think, as others have mentioned, it really broadens opportunities for publications. So, you know, we often hear that people don't want to do community-based research or interdisciplinary team research because it hurts their career. I think we found pretty much the opposite, because you end up getting credit on many people's work and you contribute to many people's work. And so I think at this point in time, it's a really ripe environment to build personal careers as well. And we've also, because of the ties and the relationships we've had, I think a lot of the people on the team have been able to spin those off into additional research support that they might not have been eligible for, or able to go out and build all of those relationships de novo. I mean, Lloyd's comments about building trust and building that continuity with communities, we've been able to stay there for 20, 30 years now. And so, you know, I think we do have a certain degree of trust that other people working with the team take advantage of and contribute to as well. I think, you know, one of the challenges that we see in the work that we do is UNM, at least in health sciences side, I'm not quite sure what the numbers look like on main campus, but we have pretty limited retention of Indigenous faculty as a group. And, you know, we find ourselves, when we are competing for grants, you know, faced with institutions that have made that a real priority. And, you know, we just, in some instances, can't compete on that level. It's something I'd really like to see some opportunities to expand. At the same time, I also know that a lot of the people who have been able to really build that mass of diversity in their faculty are also relying on donors and institutional foundation support to do that. And we don't live in a rich state. So, that is sometimes a challenge as well. So I think I'll stop there, but I'm happy to answer whatever questions come up. The Lomas Divide, of course, is always a bit of a challenge, but I think it's definitely getting better since when I started trying to build these teams. So kudos to the new administration.
The divide lessons. And I do just want to mention that Dr. Lewis is our recipient of the Community Engaged Research Lecture Award, and she'll be presenting next Friday at 5 p.m. And so everybody's invited to learn more about her work through that venue. I'd also encourage you, as we're hearing these, each of our panelists, if you do have any questions, you can keep them in mind or put them in the chat, because we are going to get to questions shortly. But we're moving on to Trevor Spoelma from Anderson School of Management.
Thanks. Hey, everybody. My name is Trevor. I'm in my 4th year here at UNM. I'm an assistant professor of management at Anderson. So I teach organizational behavior and negotiation at undergrad and grad levels. And then my research focuses on helping leaders manage teams and diverse teams more effectively in the workplace, and also how to reduce unethical and deviant behavior at work. So, I'm kind of newer in my career, so I guess I'm approaching this less as someone who has done a lot of interdisciplinary work, especially compared to some of my colleagues on this panel, but more of someone with expertise on the topic of managing teams at work, which have a lot of the same kind of problems, people in different departments and things like that. In terms of benefits and challenges, I have 2 of each that have kind of been touched on already, but the first benefit would be impact, both in terms of personal and stakeholder impact. So some of the benefits personally is like what was mentioned, interdisciplinary work gets cited more. It's definitely where knowledge creation is going. There's a lot of visibility benefits in terms of its interdisciplinary work when talking about growing your network and getting your research out there. And then also impact in terms of stakeholders. You're just able to reach a greater amount and also more diverse stakeholders. So, my business research has implications for, health, policy, government, that kind of thing can be a benefit of interdisciplinary teams. And also another benefit I would say is creativity. So this has kind of been mentioned a little bit, but just in terms of novel combinations of ideas that can come from these partnerships. Just yesterday I was at a talk where a marketing professor teamed up with a cancer researcher and was able to apply a marketing research methods technique to help the cancer doctor increase the people who would go in for optional screenings for early detection. And so it was just a really creative kind of blend of areas of expertise, something made possible with this interdisciplinary approach. In terms of drawbacks, I think there can be drawbacks in terms of the coordination, cost, and time. It almost represents different thought worlds, how to approach research questions, methods, tools, all that kind of stuff. And so it can be difficult to find exactly what's kind of worth your time to devote your limited resources to, versus not. Being smart about that. And also, I guess the second drawback, from my perspective, is that it can be in some respects riskier or more uncertain for especially early career faculty. How's it going to be rewarded? I know our business school right now is trying to decide how to reward and account for interdisciplinary research in the promotion and tenure process. And if we think about research as a conversation, finding that conversation as a more junior faculty can be a barrier, I think. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Trevor. And wrapping up our panelists, we have Cunlu Zhou, who's a postdoc.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me on the panel. I'm the most junior person here. So I'm a current postdoc researcher at UNM in the Center for Quantum Information and Control, CQIC. My current research interest is in the area of quantum computation and information, which is an interdisciplinary area that involves physics, computer science, mathematics, even chemistry, and some other scientific areas. I did my PhD in mathematics at Notre Dame, University of Notre Dame. And afterwards, I did my first postdoc in the computer science department at the University of Toronto. And now I'm in the physics department. So I have been in like 3 different departments, sort of. In my research, I have collaborated with mathematicians, engineers, and theoretical computer scientists and physicists. So my story collaboration is more on the hard science side. In terms of benefits, I guess the simplest thing is in team research, I felt so far is 1 + 1 is greater than 2. Basically, you get really new ideas and finding like new interesting problems, and that's the first thing. Sort of like in the team research, you can look at problems from different angles, and also people have different tools in their toolbox. You can solve a problem from different angles, and that has been really productive. And I guess also team research I found is more fun. That's also, to me, it's really really important. In terms of barrier, I guess definitely the vocabulary is different. Although like all the areas I've been sort of like touched on, it's like science and more mathematics, but still like people use kind of different language. And I think for me, it took me sort of a while to really adapt to that and to have this kind of mindset to really to be open-minded and to listen and ask questions and learn from people from different different areas. Yeah, I guess sort of that's my thoughts on this. Thanks.
Thank you. So at this point, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. But I'm going to start, give everybody a chance to think about it. And then if you want to speak, you can raise your hand. But I just wanted to ask the panelists, and you can jump in and see who's going to answer first. All of these different complexities of teams, from Johnnye, who has like just about everybody in the world on a team, to more limited ones. Fundamentally, you have to build trust, whether it's with your teammates or with community members. And if you're coming from different backgrounds, as Lou said, you know, there's some vocabulary differences, but there's also some sort of worldview differences. So how do you go about building that trust? What are sort of the key sort of first steps or key steps that you need to do to build that trust with those who come from different disciplines or different perspectives and experiences?
I can take a stab.
Okay.
You know, I think as in any relationships, honesty and staying there and creating a space for discussion is really critical. And the composition of who's on the team and how the team is treated as a team, I think, is also really important. I think what I've seen happen most, I mean, I can sit there and tell people how important stuff is forever, and sometimes it sinks in and sometimes it's like, oh yeah, right, you know, where's my budget, let's move on. But what's been really effective and really I think the most life-changing for people has been going out to communities and spending time there. And I've heard so many of the people, the researchers on our team, after going out and spending time in a community, coming back and saying, wow, you know, we had absolutely no idea that what we did in the lab could have an impact at that level on people's lives. And, you know, we have pretty large communities involved, and they're not shy about speaking up about things they want. And I think, you know, it has been really helpful to see when there are joint events where people are in the field together, and you have people from academic background and people from a community background, and you're looking at already from two very different worldviews, and within each multiple worldviews as well. And then the other thing that we've done, and you know, this isn't something that works in every situation, but for us, it's also been a whole series of just cultural trainings that we have collaborators from the Institute for Indigenous Education Institute, excuse me, that have brought together just some really wonderful Indigenous thought leaders to come in and talk with team, and have our Indigenous staff along with the research staff to really discuss what the meaning of these things are, and what is the difference between Indigenous science and Western science. So I think for us, you've got that really apparent divide that makes all of the other questions kind of recede a little bit, but also creates a way of speaking about them, if that makes sense.
If I just add to that, in just in terms of creating that shared understanding, I think that's really important. There's this idea of creating a team charter. You know, doesn't have to be that official, but it's, you know, it's a way to get people's expectations on the same page. You know, what are people's roles? What are they hoping to get out of this project? How are they going to handle conflict? You know, how are they going to meet? When's this team going to end? You know, just terms of making those procedures and practices explicit you know, right at the beginning of a team working together can really go a long way in building that trust, you know, developing that common language. And I think also just, you know, team members getting to know each other on a personal level and building that common ground, that can also go a long way in helping prevent, you know, misunderstandings or, you know, benign conflicts from really escalating into, you know, bigger things.
Thank you. Anybody else want to chime in on that? I have been told that the best and longest terms collaborations tended to begin in a bar, but.
Or have regular meetings there.
Any of the folks in the audience want to raise your hand and ask a question? I'll give you a minute to think about it. Go ahead, Chris Lippett. I know he's been in the bar.
Hey now. So aside from making more free beer available, how to the panel, are there things that your department, your institution, your environment could have done to make things easier on you in executing teams, or that you would like to see done for the folks that are getting started now?
I think this is Lloyd. I can chime in a little bit. I think, you know, when you look at universities around the country, including here at UNM, there's faculty mentor programs. But I think one of the challenges with that is that they're focusing the faculty member within the institution itself, within the college or the university, which is fine. But I also think that when you do team research or you do community engagement, community-based work, understanding what does that look like for that particular university and looking at their relationship with communities that they built over time, I think is important. Because I think there's an assumption there when you hear those terminologies of community engagement or community-based work or team research, everyone has a different viewpoint and different perspective about those things. And I think when you look at universities, each university has those experiences of doing team research or community engagement, community-based work. And so taking a look at that and getting the new faculty coming in aware of those types of projects and those types of work that's taking place at the university, I think is important. And I don't think departments do that very much. And I think that that's something that needs to happen, not only just in terms of just an overview of what kind of projects that the university and departments are working on regarding it, but also in terms of, talking with faculty who are engaged with that type of work, and how they got started and where they're at this moment, and how did they bring in collaborators in, and where did they find the funding, those types of things, in a way that really kind of makes their faculty mentoring much more comprehensive. I think that's a challenge. And of course, when you do that, you have to have the commitment on the part of the university as well as departments, in a variety of different ways. So that's something I think should happen.
Any other?
I think,
Go ahead, John.
I think something related to what Lloyd was just saying also is that, I think one of the reasons we've been able to be so successful is that I've had 3 deans now that have really recognized the importance of the work that we're doing and the importance of having some kind of backup support for it, some kind of institutional support that we can fill holes or add people or support students with. And I think what is challenging is when you have different departments or different colleges or whatever, different administrative units that view that differently. And I think that's one of the key pieces of the Lomas divide, is that there are very different views and policies on North and South Campus. And so it sometimes makes it hard to get everybody on the same page and not have people starting to, well, my department gave this and yours didn't, how you make that equity even among the units that are in the team collaboration academically, I think it's really important, and probably one that needs a lot more discussion too. And we've just seen lots of differences. It's not the individual people on the team, but sometimes they're sort of tasked with carrying that burden forward if they're in one of the departments that people see as not contributing. So I don't know how you do that. That's above my pay grade, but I just wanted to bring that up as something that does make challenges.
And that's why the folks above your pay grade are in a panel tomorrow that I encourage everybody to tune into. Any other suggestions to Chris's point about things that would make it easier, particularly for faculty who are just starting to get engaged in? Go ahead, Francis.
I think, I can't remember, it might have been Trevor who talked about, how it can take longer. When you're junior faculty, maybe people will say, and I probably would have said this, it's like it's riskier, right? But I don't, this is a much bigger discussion, but if there are ways for people, departments to acknowledge that there may be a lag as people are trying to get a new project started and a collaboration going. But then once that collaboration gets going, there are, in fact, the potential for many more publications, as Johnnye was talking about, because you are working with all these different people, and it can be a much richer experience, but that it may not be the trajectory that all your senior colleagues are familiar with, right? So maybe trying to get it on the radar of the department chairs as they, and colleges, that this is really worthwhile, and there might be some risk involved, but there could be potentially really great payoff.
That's a great point also, that I've seen a lot of people on the ECHO team. I've had to write an enormous number of promotion and tenure letters this year, and basically for exactly that point, to address the fact that, hey, this is a long time coming, and the last 3 years have been built up and there'll be payoff. but making people aware of that, I think, is really an important point, Francis. Thank you.
Do we have another question from anybody in the audience? And if you want to raise your hand, I can't see everybody, so you can do it virtually and do the little hand signal. I'm pausing. I actually had a question from a postdoc perspective. Well, actually from a faculty who hires potentially postdocs into faculty positions. If a postdoc or a grad student has on their resume that they have participated in some sort of interdisciplinary or team research project, does that weigh into their desirability or credibility in terms of hiring? Do you look at that? Does it play into it at all? And I ask any of you who have hired anybody, which I assume all of you have been involved at some point.
I definitely would see it as a plus, but I'm probably not the best judge of that.
Yeah, this is Lloyd. I think so. I think it's you're starting to see the universities and colleges around, not only just this country, around the world, wanting to have individuals who have those types of experiences and are willing to do those types of projects in terms of team research, in terms of community engagement, and for us in Native American studies, I think the applicants that we've gotten really are starting to show that. And bring in their creativity as in terms of not only just the research, but also in terms of their teaching and their methodology that they follow. And because I know within Native American studies, Indigenous studies, and in other disciplines, methodology is starting to be more creative in terms of the work that they're trying to accomplish. And that's something that's important, because the world that we know it, you have to be creative, you have to be interdisciplinary, you have to be engaging with each other to deal with the challenges that we're facing.
Thanks. Go ahead, Francis.
I just want to respond to some of what people have been saying, plus Gyro's Marshall's comment in the chat, which is about, grad students are hesitant about interdisciplinary projects. One of the things that, so I'm participating in the FRESH project, which is the mentoring project. And one thing that I've been hearing there, and that I can also see happening to graduate students, is you can get people who are like really good at something and you want to have them on your interdisciplinary project, which is great, except that for junior people, the thing that you need to do then is to then be able to position them so that they can begin defining, their own research within your project, and be, getting into a position where they can then be going after their own funding and being the PIs on the project, not just the helpers, right? The interdisciplinary contributors to X. And so I just hopefully people will be thinking about that as if you are, forming these teams. So how are you then positioning the graduate students and the junior faculty on your projects to then kind of go on to, lead their own, to be at the PI level, as they move on.
So if you have grad students in a team research effort, you need to, what do you need to do to help them navigate that? I mean, how do you mentor them so that they are doing their own work, but also participating in the team? That's the challenge, I think. Okay, any other questions? Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I guess just one thing I would add in thinking about Gyro's comment in the previous question is, I think there's, it's kind of easy to think about like interdisciplinary research or not as interdisciplinary research, and interdisciplinary research, like members from 5 different departments versus, just one department. But I think there are different variations of interdisciplinary research. And I think as like a more junior person, I think you can still do interdisciplinary work by, seeing something in another field and then bringing it to your field in a creative way that, contributes to your, field and really kind of carves out your path. Might be kind of a way to strike a balance between, the demands of the job market and kind of speaking that language of, your discipline, but also kind of that interest in interdisciplinary work. So it's kind of a thought.
May I just add quickly one thing? I found it's like, especially in terms of the research area that I'm working on is very interdisciplinary itself. So for me, actually, to work within teams and know different subjects, actually is an advantage. Like it's easier to get collaborations with people. And actually, in the job market, like people really seek like people who have this kind of different backgrounds.
I had a question.
Oops. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Gunny.
All right. So it's really fascinating to hear all of you. I wanted to know at what level does an undergraduate research portfolio impact what happens to students as they enter graduate research? So if you're going to teach interdisciplinary research, should you be targeting students at a much earlier stage, perhaps at a capstone project, or even before that, as they get to work in your labs, work with you as academics? So how do you mold these students as undergrads, and how does that translate into effective researchers in the grad program?
This is Lloyd. One of the requirements that we have for our undergrad students, both as a major and a minor, is to ask them to complete either an internship or an individual study. And that's an opportunity there to work with either an organization or community to kind of get the experience of what does it entail in regards to what they've been learning and how they can apply it. And then also working one-on-one with a faculty member in terms of whether it's an individual study or it's an internship. They get that experience of communicating and what they're learning with that experience with the faculty member, as well as the organization or community or the group that they're engaged with.
So Francis, do you have undergrads in your projects?
I just had brought down one undergrad from UNM, and so I think I'm trying to so the question then is, then how do we position undergraduates then to kind of continue to be successful? And I think it's to try to get them thinking about the whole, to understand that they're part of this whole big research project, and part that they understand the research design from when they're undergraduates, that they're not just helpers, but that they have that they learn about the research project by defining their projects, right, the whole research process, and then how that articulates with the bigger project, which gets them exciting and makes them feel part of the overall enterprise. And so I think that is the kind of thing that would be most helpful. I don't know if that's quite what your question was.
Yeah, more or less, but I was also looking to see if interdisciplinary research at an early age, early age as in an undergrad, I'm not talking about babies, but does that translate into more comfortable interdisciplinary researchers as grad students? Do you build it as they are far more impressionable as undergrads, or is that not a right approach to take with undergraduates?
I would think they're ready for it as undergraduates. Yeah. And I think that's the way that it's going to change, right? That it's not just part of the research, but it's also part of the training.
I'm going to switch just a little bit and ask the panelists to, what's the role of staff in your teams, whether they're interdisciplinary or single disciplinary? Are staff members part of your team, or do they have a different role? And can you just comment a little bit about the role of staff?
Yeah, our staff are definitely part of our team. And it's interesting, we have a couple of people who have major roles in the team and keeping the team together and really making it function, who are PhDs that really did not want to go through the whole grant writing and competition side of it, and love being in that position of just being able to facilitate. And they're just worth weight in gold. I mean, the ability to really pull all the pieces together and to have that background of both the staff side and the academic background to go along with it and to still be able to publish, I think has been really great. But we also include all of our field staff. All of our field staff are Indigenous, and they're very much a part of all of the team meetings and decision making, and at whatever level people choose to participate. Some people don't want to, but most at some level do. Yeah, for sure, and a really critical part.
Thank you. We have time for one more question. If we have one, I'm going to pause for just a second, and then I'm going to ask each of the panelists for a closing comment, a thought or two, either based on what you heard today or something you think that hasn't been brought up that you would like us all to keep in mind. And also keeping in mind that administrators are going to be watching this and listening to it. And so if you want them to hear something that you want them to address tomorrow, so you get like 30 seconds to put all of that into a closing comment. And I haven't seen anybody raise their hand. I'll pause again. Anybody have a last question other than that? Okay. Then we'll go in the same order. So Frances, what would you like to say as a closing comment here?
Just to encourage people to take advantage of all these fantastic seed grant programs at UNM, and get out there, start their projects, and think about what they could do beyond that once they get their projects launched. The other thing I want to put in is just that I don't know if internationalization in research and training will be part of the 2040 plan, but I hope it will be.
All right, that's exactly right. Put that plug in because they're going to hear it. Thank you. Lloyd.
Well, thank you everyone for being here this afternoon and sharing in the conversation about this. And just with a parting thought in regards to team research or community-based research or community engagement, is that the opportunities are there, and that the creativity is so much a part of those types of engagements and those types of research, and to go in that direction with your work and with your interactions with people in a positive way. And as Frances said, there's a lot of seed money here at UNM and outside of UNM as well that really can get started on these research projects and these types of initiatives that are there. So thank you.
Thank you, Lloyd. Johnnye?
Yeah, well, this has been great for me just to hear what other people are doing. And I just really want to encourage more events like this, more conversations like this. And I think the comment that was made earlier about social settings, helping people kind of understand where opportunities might be and where common interests might lie, and to reconnect on another level, I think would really also help in bringing the two campuses together. I'm really happy to see this change. I mean, I've been here since 1996 and just retired, and it's been really an interesting process to watch develop, and it's really exciting to see all of this and hear all of this. So thank you for organizing this. And I guess the only other thing I wanted to close with is just echoing what Lloyd said about in the sort of political world that we live in, where angst and individuality and frustration and anger seem to be the rule of the day. I think these kind of interdisciplinary teams help to create a little positive bubble in the middle of it that really is sustaining.
Thank you. I think we can all use positive bubbles these days, indeed. Trevor.
Yes, yeah, just as a closing comment, I guess, kind of echoing what Johnnye just touched on, but you know, I think it would be valuable to just increase ways to learn about, you know, other faculties' research who are interested in interdisciplinary work. Tongue twister there. Just you know, because I think that would help, I guess, just me personally, you know, because there are even presentations I you know, saw earlier today that are, you know, applying what they're doing to workplace settings, you know, and just, you know, that's even just a very natural collaboration for me. So whatever ways it is to just increase that awareness of what other faculty are working on, especially those who are interested in collaborations, I think would be really helpful.
Thank you. And Cunlu.
Yeah, thanks a lot. This has been fun. For me, probably just my personal experience is I really doing these collaborations with different people from different backgrounds has been really beneficial, not just in terms of like research itself, like really been productive and to have really interesting results, but also on personal, like personal development, personal growth. Also, I learned a lot from different people. And also another thing is to students and maybe at postdocs is like in team research, you can like mentors, really good mentors from like members who are engaging in this research, and they share their experience and also write you recommendation letters as well. So that's from a more practical point of view. Another thing I would say is at the UNM here at CPIC, where I'm the Center for Quality Information and Control, I think the center has really done really good job that bring people from different departments that like engage in research as well. So that's I guess yeah, another thing I want to mention. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. And I want to thank each of the panelists for taking the time to participate and to share your experiences and your insights for sure. And I do want to point out that following the session, there's an opportunity to learn about other interdisciplinary work going on campus with the Grand Challenges Lightning Talks, and then a chance to do some networking at the Grafton table, as Anita put it in the chat as well this afternoon. So I think several of you said, you know, more opportunities for networking, and we're working on that. This team research symposium is one of those. And as we move back into physical spaces, we hope there'll be more and more opportunities for that informal networking, as well as virtual networking. So thank you all very much. Thanks for participating. And I hope we'll see you at another session in the Team Research Symposium. Bye-bye.